And Hee-jung, please start.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining.
You're on mute.
You're mute, Yu-Yi-chung.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this very special and very valuable workshop will be presented by Gary. And this is a workshop organized by ASML Silicon Valley Toastmasters Club. Our club is a community club, and we are actively looking for new members. We offer real-time feedback similar to this live streaming part, and to help our members to grow up, step up, and with a specific goal. That's apart from our site. For today, the speech title is Magically Connect with Your Audience via Live Streaming. During the COVID-19 pandemic, millions of people turn to live streaming to make a living, and companies turn to virtual meetings to move forward. However, this live streaming two-way communication is extremely limited. It could easily happen that you are talking for a long time and no one responds. It will happen to me last Friday. I have to ask, hello, are you still there? Am I still connected to the meeting? Those questions are very familiar to many of us, especially in a live stream meeting. And today, it's our great honor to have our Gary McKinsey to present this Magically Connect with the Audience via live streaming. Gary is a professional speaker, a business growth and profit coach. He has worked over 40 years to work with the entrepreneurs and business owners to achieve their business goal. And when I watched several of Gary's video in the YouTube, I found the very outstanding part of Gary's speech is he provides very useful and practical tips for people to learn and improve. Please join me to welcome our presenter, Gary, to present his speech, Magical Connect to our audience while live streaming. Gary, please.
Thank you so very much. I'm delighted to be here this evening. Are you looking for a way to stand out and energize your presentations on Zoom? I'm sure you are. I want to say congratulations to you. You made a wise decision to invest your most valuable asset, your time, to be here today or this evening to pick up valuable tools and techniques and processes you can use to connect with your audience. You do this by increasing your visibility and your influence so that you can connect with your audience to make a lasting positive impression, because that's the goal, whether we're in person or, well, this is in person, but virtually in person, however you're doing it, to really make that lasting positive impression. That is so key. In the next 47 minutes, you're going to pick up time-tested, proven tools you can use as if by magic to connect with your audience and make a positive impression virtually, or these tools will work in person when we're able to meet again in one room at the same time. This is important to you because as speakers, trainers, business leaders, and as Toastmasters, to be able to effectively connect with your audience, both virtually and in person, to achieve your goals is so key. So first today, we're going to discuss the keys, activities. What do you do before you turn on your camera? When I teach presentation skills, I talk about what do you do before you step into the room. Now we're going to talk about what do you do before you turn on your camera. Second, we'll discuss practice effective communication techniques to connect with your audience. And third, presentation process or steps to gently guide your audience to deciding to act on your speech. For after all, you've invested your time. You put time into creating your speech, crafting it, practicing it. And so you want to be able to give your audience members steps that they can take to achieve their goals. And also your audience. Your audience has invested their time to be here with you, to listen to you. And so again, you want to be able to connect and lay out clear steps and give an ultimate call to action. So what do you want them to know, think, or do as a result of investing their time with you? Because the goal is to help your audience members, whether it's one member or hundreds of members, improve their life, to change their situation based upon your speech. As I think about Toastmasters, I'm thinking, had you been with me way back in time, 1993, at 5:59 a.m. on a cold, dark Thursday morning in February, you'd have seen me. I was apprehensive. I was actually a little scared to go to Toastmasters, where I was afraid to speak in public. I wasn't good at just going into a room full of strangers and meeting people. And yet my friend Jerry had invited me to come to his Toastmasters Club. He said, Gary, we're having a contest. And if you'll come as my guest, that's going to help me and the club win the contest. Well, Jerry was a friend. I thought, okay, we'll do that. He said, Gary, we start at 6 a.m. sharp. Don't be late. Well, picture this. I am standing outside this room of people I don't know. Inside, they're having fun. They're talking. They're having a great time. I'm standing outside waiting for Jerry. There's no way I'm walking into that room by myself. At 5:59 a.m., no Jerry. And I thought, okay, I'm leaving. I am not going in that room. As I walked by that door, I heard this beautiful, melodic female voice. I said, Gary, is that you? And with that, Deborah Andrus locked her arm around my arm and drugged me into the Toastmasters Club. I sat there petrified, afraid I was going to have to speak. And yet, that was the beginning of my journey. And I think, had Deborah Ann not grabbed me that day, maybe I would not be here tonight meeting all of you. So that's how I first was introduced to Toastmasters. Over that time, I spent lots of hours in meetings and being coached by individuals that these individuals, such as Craig Valentine, Darren LaCroix, Patricia Fripp, working with them to develop my skills. And I encourage you, as you're developing your speaking skills, spend time with your mentors, spend time with the individuals in your club that are mentoring you, and go outside the club to individuals such as, let's say, Darren LaCroix or Ed Tate, any of the world champions of public speaking that are putting on programs that will help you improve your presentation skills. With that, we'll bring up our first slide here. Slideshow. From the beginning there, that's where I want to be. Okay, so to connect with your audience magically, what do you do before you turn on your camera? What do you do before you turn on your camera? You'll consider the following so you make a positive first impression. First of all, spend some time thinking about what do you want your audience to think, feel, or do as a result of investing their time to be in your program, to listen to you speak. What is the outcome you're working towards? Next, think about your goal. Here again, the goal. What's the goal of the speech? And what is the goal or the outcome for the attendees, the people listening to your speech? And you want to be sure you've got your speech structured in such a way that it's orderly and you're giving clear next steps, that you know the next step and it's clear to your audience the next step. So you're moving in an orderly manner from where you are to your ultimate goal. How do you do this? Well, first it's structure. And you're Toastmasters, we're used to structure. So you structure your speech and you support your goal, again, with that clear next step. So structure is the key. And we know we're going to open with have a beginning, an opening, grabs the audience's attention, give them instructions to what they're going to receive, what's the benefit of listening to you, and how it's going to change their life. That's the structure. And then you want to be sure that you're giving them clear next steps. Oh, yes. You've probably been on videos, on live streaming, and you've seen something like it. Well, maybe not quite like this, but similar, where they're looking at the background. Oh my gosh, is it messy? Sends a message to the person. In fact, while we're speaking about backgrounds, be aware of what's going on behind you. If you're going to be on live stream, tell the people in your family, don't walk behind me. Don't walk behind me. Let them be aware you are on video and the world is watching. They can see what's going on behind you. And that way your family member or whoever you're working with understands not to walk behind you, not to be in the video, in your live stream. So you want to remove distractions. Distractions sends the wrong message to your audience. Also, be organized. Stop before you turn on your camera. Pause. Take maybe 3 deep breaths. Get comfortable. Look at your desk. Is it organized? Is it orderly? Everything that you're going to need in your presentation, is it right there where you can get to it easily? Why is this so important? Because if you're suddenly giving your presentation, you realize you need a prop, and the prop is out of your reach. You've got to physically leave the camera, leave the stage to get your prop. The audience loses their attention. You've broken the attention span. So have everything right there in front of you, everything you think you're going to need. Have it organized. That gives you confidence in your presentation. You know that everything is there, and it makes it easier for you to move through your presentation just by being organized. And also, again, you notice in this video picture here, there aren't any distractions. Everything this person needs is right there in front of them. No distractions, nothing distracting them. So be organized. Organize your work area. And then practice. Practice. Turn on your Zoom and practice your presentation just as if you were giving it to your audience. Practice it. Now, here again, we as Toastmasters, we know we practice our speeches, don't we? Don't just walk into our meeting and hope it all works out. We've practiced our speech. And many times individuals ask, well, what are techniques for practicing? And my answer is, it's the one that works for you. Like for me, once I've got my speech written, and my outline and written, I go to a quiet place and I just read over my speech. And while I'm reading it, I'm visualizing what I'm saying, what's taking place. And what I'm doing is I'm getting it into me. I'm getting into my body, that speech. And then once I've done that, I come down into my office where my computer and monitor and camera set up, and I practice giving the speech, practice it, so that when a time comes, I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable giving the speech. I encourage you to go through this. Does it take time? Yes, it takes time. However, your speech will be so much better. It'll be so much better received by your audience because it's natural. You're not forcing it. You're not reading it. It's not memorized speech. It's just coming to out naturally. And it's going to connect with your audience. And your audience knows that. So practice. Also, think about your attire. Think about what is appropriate attire. What should you be wearing? Think about who is in your audience and the impression you want to make. 2 weeks ago, I was speaking with a hiring manager, and she said, Gary, I just can't believe how her word was sloppily, but anyway, her word was sloppily dressed. People come to this interview. She was hiring individuals for a very well-paid position, and yet they didn't bother to clean up their background. They didn't bother to really get dressed or dressed up. And she's thinking, she said, this is a good paying job, and I'm not going to hire anyone that comes to an interview with me that didn't spend some time thinking about their attire, about their look, because they're going to be interacting with our staff and they are going to be interacting with our clients. And our clients are not going to be receptive. So I don't believe they'll be receptive to someone that's poorly dressed. My message to you, think about your audience and dress appropriately. Dress so you match your audience. If it's super, super casual, you want to be super, super casual. If your audience is more dress coats and so forth, it's called sports jackets. That's what I'm trying to think. Sports jackets and a tie. That's how you want to be dressed. You want to look similar to your audience. So that's your dress. And then I'm thinking, are you part of the 65%? I know you're thinking, Gary, what is 65%? What does that represent? Just last week, I was listening to a Wall Street Journal reporter, and she was interviewing a panel of hiring managers. And she said to the hiring managers, the Wall Street Journal had just conducted a poll. And of the people, the question was, are you anticipating leaving your employment? Are you anticipating looking for a different job? And 65% of the people interviewed said in the next 30 to 60 days, they were going to be looking for new employment. So why is this pertinent to you? Maybe you are one of that 65%. And here's why this is so critical, being able to magically connect with your audience virtually. The Wall Street Journal reporter went ahead and asked the hiring managers to go through the process with us. What is the hiring process? And they said, well, first, people fill out the application. And yes, we use artificial intelligence to help us winnow down to the individuals that we feel would be a good fit. And then we are going to interview them virtually. They're all going to be virtual video interviews. And they said there might be up to 5 different virtual interviews before they actually invite a person in to meet with them personally. This can be very critical. How do you touch your audience, a potential employer? Or maybe you're looking for job advancement and you're on conference calls. You want to be able to stand out and be noticed. I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know, but you want to stand out and be noticed so that the supervisors or managers, whomever is above you, notices you and say, hey, let's give this person a try. And it's going to all be based on how you connect with them virtually. This is a big deal. Connecting with your audience magically. What else do you do before you turn on your camera? Well, you get prepared. As I mentioned earlier, maybe some deep breaths, you get relaxed. You notice in the picture here, the person is well dressed, got a smile. Smile is key. Smiling and making eye contact, looking into the camera, actually looking through the camera at the person on the other side and envisioning that individual or individuals, envisioning them. So you get ready, you're smiling. At this point, you're just about ready to turn on your camera. Remember, first impressions count. First impressions count. And we want to make a positive first impression on your virtual, when you're connecting virtually. Let me add one other thing. It's just magical also. People like to be acknowledged. So prior to you actually turning on your camera, maybe your camera's not on, but you can see people in the meeting or coming into the meeting. Send them a chat and say, hey, hello, welcome, glad you're here. It makes people feel noticed, and we all like to feel noticed. So that's just a little extra way of making that positive first impression and magically connecting with your audience. First impressions speak loudly. So it's time for some questions. Let me stop the share here and just ask, do you have questions? Let me check the chat and see. So at this point, I'm glad to entertain questions.
I have
a question. Go ahead. Go ahead, Ting.
Thank you, Arnie. Gary, you mentioned 65% of people are going to be on virtual interviews in the near future. And I was imagining a virtual interview situation. Do you actually send out chat to your hiring managers? That kind of like a little bit awkward in my mind. What's your opinion?
Are you saying do you send a chat message to them?
Yeah, private chat. Say like you mentioned people like to be acknowledged. That's true. But if you are being interviewed and you are sending private chat to individual person on the panel, that's kind of I don't know. I've never done that before, so I was like, not sure I can bring myself doing that.
Okay, I'm glad you're asking that question. In a hiring interview, I would not send a message in the private chat. What I was referring to is like in a group setting such as this, in a meeting or Toastmasters meeting, there's where the private chat message is perfect, but absolutely never in a hiring situation. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much for helping clarify what I wanted to say. See, I had another note here. How do you become a speaker without the use of memorizing your speech or reading your speech?
Mr. McKinsey, hi. Thank you. The first 15 seconds, the most critical part of your persona or speech making. So in terms of gestures, in terms of words, in terms of movement, what do you do to get connected to the audience right away? And that's point number one. Point number two, you mentioned Patricia Fripp. Patricia Fripp is very emphatic on the foundational phrase, not the structure, foundational phrase. And the stories, words of wisdom to support the foundational phrase. Three things, that's it. But you're talking about vaguely structure, which is not very specific. What are your thoughts on that? Thank you, sir.
Okay, we had three questions there in one. Let me come. So what was that first question again?
the first 15 seconds, in terms of voice, in terms of words, in terms of gestures of movement, other than smile or eye contact, what movement do you need to do to get the audience attention right away? And the
Okay, let
second
me
one
start.
is the,
Yeah, let me answer
Okay.
that one right there. What you do to get your audience's attention right away, first of all, you're ready, you're poised, you're making eye contact, you're smiling. And then you start off by asking a question. You can ask a question, asking a question, making a statement that it's going to surprise people that you've made that statement. Or if you have a good story, a short story, probably 30 seconds, 45 seconds at the most, a short story that engages the audience and is pertinent to your overall message. And that gives you a chance to be animated, to use gestures, use the word you. You is extremely important. Use the word not you, not all of you, you. Have you. Those are good ways to gain the attention of your audience. But again, you start right off, you jump right into your presentation. Ed Tate calls that breaking your audience's preoccupation. So you jump into your program immediately with good solid words, voice inflections. And if you can tell a story and tell the story using part dialogue, so it's not just you narrating it, but use some dialogue, that brings your audience into your story also. It helps them connect with you. So that's my answer to the first part. What was that second question?
the second question is your structure. I think it's a very vague, ambiguous thing. But Patricia Fripp, your I don't know, co-member of NSA, said first emphasize the foundational phrase. All public speaking books, they require foundational phrase, the central idea, the thesis, your advocacy, your argument. Where do you put that foundational phrase and how do you word it? How do you style it in terms of prose?
Defining your theme or your foundational phrase, once you've identified your foundational phrase that fits the theme, then again, I like to start off with a story or a statement that grabs your audience's attention. Then we're going to make them a promise. Here's what you're going to receive because you've listened, because you've attended. And then your structure, let's see, if you got 3 topics you're going to touch on, you mention those 3 topics. That's your opening right there. Then introduce yourself, something about yourself, a little story, just like I introduced that little story I had of when I first went to Toastmasters. And then go into your 3 points. Make your point. After you've made your points and told maybe a story about the point, then you summarize and then you close. And that is the structure. That's the structure I follow. It's very similar to the structure that Patricia Fripp follows.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Go ahead, Mr. McKinsey. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
You. And let me answer this one other question here. Let me find it. How do you become a speaker without the use of notes or memorizing your speech? That is practice. Write out your speech. You've got to write it out. Then practice it. Go over it. As one of my mentors, Craig Valentine, says, relive it. So you've practiced the speech. You've got it in you. It's in your body. So the speech is there. Your gestures are there, and you practice it. You rehearse it. It's not memorized. It's not memorized. But just by practicing it and seeing it, visually seeing your speech, at least for me, I see it. I see my speech. That allows you to step on stage, whether it's virtual like this, or step on stage and give your presentation. It's very natural. It's very authentic, and everything comes out in order. So that's my suggestion as to how you do it. That's what works. That's what works for me. And a lot of it is visualizing, knowing here's step 1, what I'm talking about, leads to number 2, it's what I'm talking about. Number 3, it's what I'm talking about. So that's that. Let me check one more question, then we'll move on. Since you mentioned to speak loudly, but I have a natural low voice, do you have any tips for me? You don't speak loud all the time. If you've got a low voice, be aware of it. It means you want to be a little closer to the microphone and accentuate your statements and look for those opportunities to add a little more volume to your voice and then drop it back down. And that helps, that rhythm, that up and down, helps there again to connect with your audience and helps them. And for individuals that just talk loud all the time, people go, oh, they get tired of that. And if it's too low all the time, people are leaning in like, what are they saying? And they get struggling. So again, it's just practice. One last question, I've got to move on. Deanna? You're
Deanna,
mute.
you can type your question if you want, Deanna.
Yeah, type your question in. That'll be easier and I will answer it. In fact, type it in. I'm going to talk a little bit more in the next part, but I'll come back to your question. So type it in, Deanna. Thank you. Thank you for that suggestion. Let me come back to my slides. I'm getting back to my slides here. I'm going to talk about sensory words. We talked about sensory words. These are sensory words. These are words that connect with your senses, such as vision, hearing, touching, feeling. Sensory words. And sensory words are so crucial. They're so key. Excuse me. That's why they're connecting to the subconscious mind of your audience member, subconscious mind of the person you're speaking with. And I don't get very woo-woo in my presentations. However, I am a certified neuro-linguistic programming executive coach. And so we want to use sensory words to connect with the subconscious mind of your audience. And this is important for you because when you've connected subconsciously, the individual is thinking and feeling like, you know, something about this person. I like them. I think I want to get to know them. And I trust them. And when that person knows, likes, and trusts you, they are more apt to do business with you, to accept your suggestions, and to be willing to work with you. So that's the beauty of sensory words. And we're going to spend some time digging into those words and how we use those words. Now, when I'm talking about this, there are three main ways we like to learn or we like to communicate. In my slide here, it's called a learning style. All kinds of terminologies trying to explain this. What it comes down to is each of us naturally tends to like to learn and likes to communicate, maybe auditorially by listening. Maybe it's more visual, or maybe it's more kinesthetic. So we use all of these interchangeably, and yet we've got one method, one that we tend to lean towards, we tend to gravitate towards. And by being aware of this and being aware of those words, it's going to help you connect with your audience. It's going to help you when you're in an employment interview. It's going to help you when you're selling a product or making a speech and wanting to move your audience to take them to that next step. So what are these words? Let's look at these. These are different, say, communication styles. First, we talk about people being left brain and right brain. Left brain, okay, left brain over here. They're down to earth. I should say down to earth. They're technical. They're serious. They're task oriented. Let's go in. Let's get it done. Not a lot of play. Right brain, green, flowers, activity, having fun, doing different things. So we want to connect with individuals, and we want to connect with both their left brain and their right brain. Now, in this case, we're dealing kind of visual. You notice the visual's got a lot of color, a lot of action, a lot of excitement to it. So that's visual. And a person that's a visual learner or a visual communicator, when you listen to their words, you're going to hear lots of words. We'll call them picture words when they're talking about pictures. So that's a visual communicator. And you can pick up on that just by listening to the words. In fact, quite often the person says, do you see what I mean? See, visual. Probably dealing with a visual learner. And good if you can respond with visual words. Next one, sensory word, is auditory. That's the individual that likes to receive their instructions verbally, and they will give instructions verbally. And they've got lots of sound when they're talking about something. If they say the car came up, car stopped quickly, they'll say the car, you hear the screech of the tires as the car came to a halt. They will use words, they will use sounds. That's auditory. And then the kinesthetic individual, their emotion, they speak with emotions, they're feeling. And this individual learns by doing. Now, some people, visual learners, they like to see if you're giving instruction to them, they want to see, maybe they go to a YouTube video. Auditory learner, they just want to hear, just explain to me how the step, what are the steps? A kinesthetic learner says, here, let me do it. Let me follow you through and let me do it. And when you're speaking with those individuals, they're going to use emotions. They've got lots of feeling. And quite often, they speak slowly and their voice is lower tones because they're thinking, they're feeling as they're expressing their feelings, their beliefs, their emotions. And so you want to listen to that. If you're working with somebody that speaks slowly, using emotional words, last thing you want to do is speak rapidly. You'll lose them. Slow down, connect with them emotionally. Now, sometimes individuals say, well, Gary, what part of the population makes up these different groups? Well, in general, about 60% of any given group of individuals are visual learners. They communicate visually. Probably another 35% are auditory, and 5 to 10% of individuals are kinesthetic. And yet we want to be aware of this as we're crafting our messages, as we're connecting with individuals virtually, because these words are so powerful. This language, the language of visual language, auditory language, and kinesthetic language, because again, we're connecting with the subconscious mind of the individual. We're going to create that know, like, and trust. So think about sensory words. We're thinking about your voice, your story. You have a story and you have a voice. So how do we put this together? So in a moment, I'm going to give you an opportunity to tell your story using sensory words. Perhaps it's your branding story. Just last week, I gave a presentation on how to find and use your branding story. Or maybe you think of it as your signature story. So we're going to have a chance to use some selected sensory words just to practice putting these words into your vocabulary. So here's a list of just simple sensory words. Very short list, very short list. For visual, this is word picture, observe, horizon. For instance, if you're an individual might say to you, if they're visual, I looked at the horizon and I could see the beautiful glows, the hues of oranges and reds and violets as the sun was setting. Clearly a visual individual, they're a visual communicator. Next, auditory. Here's just a term like rings a bell. That rings a bell. Or be heard. Or listen. Quite often auditory individuals say, now just listen to me for a moment. Auditory. Kinesthetic. Now, kinesthetic, that's touching things like get a hold of it or grasp or tap into. They might say to you, if you can grasp my idea and you can tap into what I'm saying, and you'll be able to get a hold of this, you are going to be able to move so fast. Just examples of using kinesthetic, auditory, and visual. So I'm going to, in a moment, we're going to practice using these words. So here's what I'd like to have you do. Before we go into a breakout, take a screenshot so that you have this with you. Just take a screenshot of this slide. Why? Because I'm going to ask you to tell a story. Maybe it's your signature story, or maybe it's just table topics and you're just going to tell a story. But try to use a visual word, an auditory word, and a kinesthetic word. And here's some samples. If you have other words that fit, great, use those. However, these are just some samples to get you started. So again, I encourage you, take a screenshot. Take a screenshot so you have this with you when you go into the breakout room. Okay. So here's how the breakout rooms will work. One person will be the storyteller, the talker. The storyteller will have a minute, give you a minute to tell your story using one of these visual, auditory, kinesthetic words. If you can use one word out of each category, wonderful. But at least try to get one word in from one of the categories. And again, take a screenshot if you haven't already. You will have one person will be the listener. So you got one person talking, one person listening, because that person is going to be the evaluator. They're going to give you feedback. And then one person will be the timer. And the beauty of Toastmasters is we know about timing. We're familiar with timing. So one person will be the timer. So after the one person, after 2 minutes, you have a minute to speak, a minute for evaluation, then we're going to switch. And the next person will tell their story, be evaluated, and then you'll switch again, each time taking turns being the timer, being the speaker, and being the evaluator. So if this was a live in-person room at this point, I would tend to look at the audience and I would invite someone to join me on stage and say, let's practice telling a story. So I'm going to invite you to join with me here on this virtual stage, at least one individual, and let's just give a short story. Maybe it's just 30 seconds. Maybe it's just the opening of a story, and try to use one of the visual words we just discussed. So I invite you, who would be a good candidate? Who would like to raise their hand and say, yes, Gary, I'll join you on the virtual stage. Harry, you got that look. Harry, smiling. If you would unmute yourself, would you join me? Would you mind? There, welcome.
You're talking to me?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I thought Hung raised her hand. Yes, I can. You want?
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. Go ahead, Hung.
Me? Oh, wow. What a pleasure. I've been thinking about a little thing happened when I was very young. I was about like 3 or 4 years old. I grew up in China, and everybody live in apartment buildings. They have exactly the same layout inside. So my family at the sink, we always keep the soap at a specific location because that's where the soap always is. And so I went to my little friend's house to play. And when I got around to wash my hand, obviously I look at that location to look for my soap. And guess what? The soap wasn't there. I couldn't find the soap. Why? Because my friend's family keeps their soap somewhere else. And I couldn't get my little hand slippery to wash because I wasn't able to find their soap. And that got my little hand cranking and thinking, wow, soap can go somewhere else. Isn't that fascinating? And it keeps coming back to me lately, because I think that becomes my almost defining moment, because for the rest of my life, I keep trying to think, well, do I have to do things this way? Is this where the soap has to go to?
Mm.
Can I put the soap somewhere else and that still works? So that was my little story.
I think
Thank you.
it's an excellent story. It's excellent. Let me ask you, everybody, thank you. Let me ask you, let's tell the story again, but let's see if we can get a visual word, an auditory word, and a kinesthetic word. So just start with your opening part of that story, and let's see if we can find a picture word that either say, you might even start off by saying, picture this. I was 3 years old. Tell a little bit about 3 years old. Maybe I went to visit a friend's house, and you used something about I heard her say, or I heard, or you might even use this term. Does this ring a bell with any of you? And then with the soap, I think that is fascinating. And maybe a word like grasp, or tap into this. Because I really like that ultimate question you're asking. Does it have to be this way? Can it be different? So share your story with us one more time, please. And try to get those words in if you can.
All the pressure, son. Picture this. I was a little girl of 3-year-old, running about in my little dress, going to my friend's house for play date. And of course, I got my little hand dirty playing, and her parents was asking me, oh, come wash your hand. And I went to their sink and I looked for the soap. I couldn't find it. Guess what? Because in my little apartment where I grew up, my parents put the soap somewhere specifically, and the apartments all had the same layout. So I looked for that specific location for the soap. And it wasn't there, of course, because my friend's parents keep their soap somewhere else. And I couldn't grasp that concept that the soap does not have to be there. I was stuck. I couldn't find my soap. And then, where was I? I think that became a revelation and almost a defining moment of my life, because now it got me thinking, oh, the soap doesn't always have to be there. Where else can I put the soap? The solution doesn't have to be that one. Is there another solution that also works? Or even better? So if you tap into that kind of mindset, you may become a better engineer, scientist, problem solver, or entrepreneur, just because the soap doesn't have to be there.
Thank you. And that is a beautiful signature story, or your branding story. When you work on that, it fits nicely. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you. And let's see. I promised Deanna I would answer her question. I believe she's put it in the chat. Let me see if she did. That interview on the camera, Zoom, just my first time live. How do you sign your name? And interview on the camera. It's live Zoom, just my first time live. How do I find my name? Don't think I understand the question because I can see on your screen your name is there. So maybe that's something that after we finish the program, we can go into that a little bit more because I'm afraid I don't understand the question. Let me come back and share my screen here just for a moment. Again, thank you. So here we go for sensory words for the maximum benefit. Let's review the activity. 3 people per breakout room. Time is going to be 6 minutes. Then we'll come back for a debrief. So if we can take the individuals to the breakout rooms, again, 3 people per breakout room. And if our numbers aren't quite right, we might end up with 4. So if our tech host can send us to the breakout rooms for 6 minutes.
Hey, Yufang. I got a note to go to breakout room 5, but I thought we were only going to have 4, so I came back. Because I think we had 25 people, so there should be 1 room with 1 extra person.
Do you want to be in a different room? I can move you to room
It doesn't
4.
matter. Yeah, whichever you can. Okay, I see it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
My suggestion is at one point, maybe when you entered the alley, at some point, a little more emotion of how you felt. I didn't quite pick up that. Maybe just a little more, oh, I felt, did you feel scared? Did you feel what? An awe? Just a little bit about how did you feel? That's my suggestion. Good job. I like that. Excellent, excellent. Okay.
For the advice.
Thank you. Oh, and we have another member joined us. Great. Thank you. Glad you're here. Would you like to share your story? Fang?
Yes, I can tell a really short story. Picture this. On the morning of first day of school, our two boys whining, just getting out of bed. And they need to have their breakfast, and they need to get dressed, and they need to put on their shoes and be drive to school. Can you imagine all the cars zooming through the street? And finally, we're at the gate of school, and the doors opened by a volunteer, and they pick up their school bag and disappeared into the school. Can you tap into the final relief? Oh, my kids are now in school. Back to you.
Good job. Good job. Since I evaluated last time, would someone else like to evaluate this time?
I can try.
Okay.
That's a really, there are a lot of points we can connect because we have all been parents, we've all gone through that and all done this. So my feeling is that the purpose is the final relief going through the morning chaos and the danger of the drive because it can be pretty hectic. And I was thinking if you can evoke more visual and maybe auditory, maybe some disarray on the breakfast table, cereals all over, spoons flying, and people talking over each other. Sounds like there were multiple kids, and then may or may not be able to find all their backpacks and their straps and both of their shoes and both of their socks and stuff like that. And then like the chaos, because that will kind of build up and contrast the final relief of finally they're in school again. And also the past more than a year, the pandemic, all like the constant strain on the parents and all this kind of build up. So that's my feeling to that. And I did notice the visual words and the kinesthetic words and the auditory words, the description of the traffic. That was brilliant. That's also
Very good. Yes. I too was picking up on the words and the way you, the end, you used a nice kinesthetic because the emotion. That was so good. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Time check. Can I close all rooms?
Yes, we're there. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
See, slowly people are coming back to the main room. Here we go. Give another second or two for everyone to get back, come back from the room. So I get a volunteer to share their experience. What was your experience at telling a story using a visual, an auditory, and a kinesthetic word, please just raise your hand and we'll call on you. So who would like?
I'd have to say that the experience was energizing. It was much more quote unquote fun than just telling a story, but with no visual details, no strong verbs or adjectives whatsoever. With the details, it made telling the story a lot more relaxing.
Okay, good, good, excellent. And one other individual before we close, I want to be respectful of your time. Yes. Is it Ami?
Arneson.
Yes.
Yeah, this is the story of my partner, Roy. She was talking about the telephone that rang. That's the telephone of her husband. And she was not sure at the time what's going on. Her husband took the phone and answered someone else. They were talking. And that's the time Roy was suspicious of something else. Who is she talking to? Is she cheating on me? And I could see that emotion thing getting up. And then after the talk, without hearing every word, she asked him, "Are you cheating on me?" And almost with that guilt feeling and hesitation to answer Rui, slowly he said, "I and my friend are planning a surprise for you." And that was the time Rui was relieved of her tied in suspicion of what her husband is up to. I like it. It's funny because anybody can have that kind of experience between two young married couple. I like it.
It's a good story, and you could have got room for a lot of emotion.
You see it
there. I like the way you dropped your voice when you said, "Are you cheating?" You said, "We're planning a surprise birthday party, or we're planning a surprise party." Nice way to engage your audience by dropping your voice and speaking very slowly in that lower tone. Excellent, excellent.
Thank
Very
you,
good.
sir.
Very good. Oh, well, I want to thank everyone. This has been so much fun. Thank you for, again, investing your most valuable resource, your time, to be here tonight, to pick up some tools and techniques that you can use to help magically connect with your audience, with your virtual audience. With that, we turn control the meeting to our Toastmaster.
To deliver the closing remarks. It looks like Yichong's freezing.
Yes, I guess we are.
Yes, Yichong,
No?
please.
Okay, yeah, great, thank you. Thank you so much, Gary, to give us this very concise and pointing guidance. I like this. The first thing I want to join this one, we have Gary, maybe you can also put your website here. If you have more things you would like to Gary's coach, you can visit Gary's website. Gary is so humble to not mention this one. Let's put it here in our chat.
Here I can share my screen. I should have it somewhere in here. Let me find that. There we go.
Yeah, I also put it in the chat.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gary. And also, I would like to thank everyone to join today's workshop. This is ASML Silicon Valley Toastmaster Club with the national-wide club members. We meet weekly to help our club members to practice the leadership and communication skill with constructive feedback from everyone in the club. We also offering this monthly workshop, round-robin evaluation and mentoring program. You are very welcome to be our guest and member. And also thank you so much for Gary again to give us this very valuable workshop.
Appreciate it.
Any more questions?
Thank you, Gary.
If
This is
not,
wonderful.
thank you, Gary, and thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. Really
Very
appreciate
nice.
the tips.
Thank
you.
sir.
Great job.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, and for those guests, if you want to join this club, this is a very good club. The only club in District 101, District 4 or 57 that holds workshop every month, just like a university. There is direct, straightforward practice, hands-on during those are regular programs. And every month they have at least a very reputable speaker on a certain special subject. And it's just like a university. Combination of actual practice and a university atmosphere. ASML is a very good club. Nothing is close to it.
Thank you, Arnie.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Gianna.
you.
Thank you, Deanna.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay,
And
thank
bye,
you so much.
everyone.
Have a good evening.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.